Hello all, welcome back to my videos. Today let's create an inbound rule for a security group using boto3. For today's scenario, I'll be creating a new VPC as the VPC ID is required to create a security group. So I will be creating a new security group and then I will be creating an inbound rule and attach it to the newly created security group. So to start with, I need to import boto3. So let's import boto3. Then I need to create a client resource. So let's see, my client equals boto3 dot client, and then the service is EC2. Okay, so next thing what I'm going to do is that I will create a new VPC and assign the VPC ID to a variable which I can use later on in my script. So let me create the variable called as VPC ID, and then I will use the method called as create VPC. My client dot create underscore VPC. So inside create VPC, I will be using an attribute called as CIDR block to define my network. So that will be, so for this I'm taking the IP 192.168.10.0/24, and what I will do is that I will just give it some name. So I will mention tag specifications equals, okay, this one is closed over here, and I will use a value, a parameter called as a resource type, and over here as I'm using VPC, the resource type will be VPC. Then another parameter that I'm going to use is tags. Okay, tags, and then I will create a list, and inside that list I need to create a dictionary. Okay, so this tag will take in two parameters called as key and a value. So for key, I have to type in key over here. Oops. And key that I'm going to use is name, and then one more key is values, and then the value will be the name that I want to use. That will be my underscore VPC test. Okay, so let me close this. Okay, so this looks good. So now what I'm doing is that I'm creating a VPC and I'm allocating it a network block of 192.168.10.0, so that approximately brings me around 255 IP addresses. So that makes around 253 usable IP addresses. So now what I will do is I will extract the VPC ID. So for that I will use the key called as VPC, and then another key called as VPC ID. So I'm assigning this value to this particular variable over here, which I will be using, as I mentioned, I will be using later on in my script. So now as I've created the VPC, now let me create the new security group. So over here also I will do the same. I will extract the security group ID as I need this security group ID while I create my inbound rules. So this basically, when I mention the security, this is security group ID inside the inbound rule, then that particular inbound rule will get associated with this security group. So let me create a variable that will hold the security group ID, and then for this I will be using a method called as create security group. So it will be my client dot create underscore security underscore group, and let's okay. So here inside create security group, I will use one attribute called description. So let me give a description to my security group. So that will be my security group. Okay. The next attribute that I am going to use is group name. So that will be my SG. Okay. The next attribute that I'm going to use is the VPC ID, and over here I will assign it the VPC, the value that I have stored in this variable called as VPC ID. Okay. So next thing again, I'll give it some name so that I can identify it. So I'll use the tag specifications again. This time in place of resource type, so inside resource IP, earlier I used VPC. So now as it is a security group, so I will be using the resource type as security group, and the tags, okay, the syntax will remain the same. So key is name, and the value that it has is, I'll change it to my security security group 1. Okay, so this will create my new security group, and from that I need to extract the security group. So I will use the key called as group ID to extract the security group ID over here and assign it to the variable called as SGID. The next thing what I'm going to do is I will create the inbound rule. So to create the inbound rule, what I have to do is I have to use a method called as authorize security group ingress. So let me create that, my underscore client dot authorize with a Z underscore security underscore group underscore ingress. Okay. So inside this, the attribute that I'm going to use is called as group ID, and in this I will mention the value that I have stored in this variable called as SGID. So this is basically the security group ID that I am defining over here. Inside this, I need to create IP permissions. So I will be using an attribute called as IP permissions. Okay, and it takes a list. Okay, sorry, it is one word. IP permissions is one word. Okay, looks good. So inside this IP permission, inside this particular list, I will be creating two dictionaries. So that will this dictionaries will hold the rules. So let me create two dictionaries. Okay, so one dictionary for one rule and the other dictionary for the other rule. So we have two rules, so I'm using two dictionaries. Inside this dictionary, I will use a key called as from. Okay, so in the first rule list, what I'm going to create is I'm trying to open the port number 22. So it's only one single port that I am opening. So the first key value that I have to use is from port, and that will be 22. Then I have to use the protocol type that will be defined under IP protocol, IP protocol, and the IP protocol that I'm going to use is TCP. Okay, so now next thing is that I have to define the IP ranges, the source IP ranges that I will be allowing. So to do that, I have to use IP ranges, and then inside that I have to create a list, and then inside the list I need to create a dictionary with the, the CIDR IP range. And over here for practice, I'm just opening everything at 0.0/0, and then I'm putting a description to it as well. Description. Okay, and the description that I'm going to use is my inbound rule 1. Okay, so now as I have defined the IP ranges, the next thing I have to do is that I have to use one more parameter that is called as 2, and then it will be 22. So over here I am just opening one port, so I have given from and to the same value. So the from is like the first port number, and 2 is the last port number till which you want to, if you want to open a particular range. So right now I'm just opening one port, so I have given the same port number in the from and to. So next thing what we will do is that we will create another rule, and we will open a different set of port ranges over here. Sorry, the different port ranges over here. So so the port range that I want to open is the first port that I want to open is 10,000, and I want the end port range is 20,000. So that is approximately 10,000 ports that I will be opening, allowing in my security inbound rule. So so the from port, the first port number is mentioned over here in the from port parameter, and the last port range I will mention over here, that is 20,000. So what it will do is that it will open port from 10,000 till 20,000, right? So I'm allowing ports from 10,000 till 20,000 that can be connected on my EC2 instance when I connect this particular security group to an EC2 instance, and any source IP can connect to it. Okay, so what I will do is that, okay, so let's go ahead and execute it. My expectancy is that it will create all this block, it will execute all these codes, and it will create the new VPC, new security group, and the new inbound rule. So let's go ahead and execute it. Let's see if there are any errors that might come. Okay, so there is an error. Okay, what says unknown parameter in tag specifications, value must be one of key or value. Okay, so what I did is that, okay, so it is not values, it is value over here. Okay, so once I've done it, let's go ahead and run it once again. Okay, so now the code has executed successfully, and let me connect to my AWS console to see if this new VPC with name my VPC test and security group with my security group 1 has been created or not. Then we will check the inbound rules as well. Okay, so I have connected to my AWS console, and let me refresh the screen over here. Let me refresh it, and if you see over here, the VPC, my VPC test has been created. Okay, and now let's go to the security groups. Okay, so my security group has been created as well. And if I click on that and go to inbound rules, you can see that we have created two inbound rules to the script. So one inbound rule is allowing the port range 22, and the other rule is allowing port ranges from 10,000 to 20,000. I hope through this video you were able to learn how to create security groups and assign it inbound rules. In next video, we will do something interesting with boto3. Till then, take care. Have a great day. Bye bye.